I was appointed as digital minister, as you said.
What does it actually mean to be a digital minister?
That's a great question, and I don't know.
You're working it out.
I think a made for digital service is actually far more achievable than people think.
We've got all these churches, we've got all this gear and equipment for live streaming, but when restrictions are a thing of the past, what do we do with that gear from then? Do we let it sit on a shelf and gather dust? I don't think so. God has taken many churches through a one-way door into the digital age. So I want to find out what different churches are doing in the space. Today, I'm talking to Digital Minister Andy Barras of St. John's, Diamond Creek in Melbourne. He's a member of our very own church livestream Level Up group. He's been here since the beginning, and they built their own small church studio, from which they're producing a fully digital Sunday service alongside other video content. In this chat, we're going to cover what it means to be a digital minister, a new vision for church planting that has come about due to cheaper and new technology, why they chose to do a digital service rather than a hybrid live stream, and you'll get a walkthrough of how easy it is to create a small studio of your own. So stick around or use the timestamps to jump around if something is particularly of interest to you. Thanks for coming, Andy. How are you going today?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, and hi everyone in the group. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Could you give me a quick recap again of what your church is doing?
If we rewind to 2020 and restrictions, obviously, like everyone else, we were doing digital church. That bounced back and forward between live streaming and pre-recording. And as we've been able to resume in-person services, we had this desire to not, abandon our digital presence. Our strategy behind that was to not do what's often referred to as hybrid services. We've got this studio that we're in now, and we're able to do a made for digital service, which is what we call it, which is hosted and preached to camera, and that's premiered on YouTube. And yeah, we were in a very fortunate position. A very generous benefactor essentially offered to buy us a full studio to my specification.
Wow.
We're able to resource that really, really well.
So I'll just define the hybrid service for maybe churches who haven't heard of it. So the hybrid approach is when you're essentially doing a true live stream. You have a service, you run it for people in the room, and you stream it for viewers at home as well. Churches who pre-recorded during COVID, they made a service that was fully recorded, edited, then uploaded. They found that when they had in-person congregations coming back, they essentially were doubling their efforts. So if you can do a hybrid service, well, you can, hopefully, it is harder, it takes a lot more strategy and tact, serve two at once. But I find, that's at your church, I suppose. I haven't heard of another church like it that has gone, let's double down on our digital congregation. So I suppose my first question would be, how big is your online viewership at the moment, and what does that congregation look like demographic-wise? Do they switch services, or are they just online?
We're still working that out to a certain extent. We're still trying to wrestle with how you connect well with people who are only watching online. In terms of raw numbers, for a bit of context, pre-COVID, we had 4 services across our church, with 2 of them here at St. John's and 2 of them we've got little campus churches as well. Those ones were fairly small, like less than 20 people at each one. Our services at St. John's would average the morning service about 180, peaking at about 220, and our evening averaging around 60, peaking at around 80. And so since we've moved back to in-person this year, we're about 120 in the morning and about 60 again in the evening. And then we're seeing about 50 people watching online. We're still working out, is it the same 50 people?
How did you personally get involved in this? Because I know it was only recently that you were
appointed? Yeah.
appointed as the digital minister, which is a cool title. What led to you having this position and I guess designing the studio?
I've been a member of St. John's for most of my life. It's where I grew up. It's where I met my wife at the youth group. We're the classic youth group family. About 3 years ago, I was offered a part-time position as communications director, or communications guy was my more my more informal title. And then during COVID, obviously that shifted quite dramatically to have my role as much more of the forefront, I was appointed as digital minister, as you said.
What does it actually mean to be a digital minister?
That's a great question, and I don't know.
You're working it out. It's just
absolutely.
COVID, church online, we need someone to oversee this.
It's a season of great transition for us as a church. We've just gotten approval from our council to move forward with this, but we've been talking about a tri-modal way of doing church. So 3 ways of doing church that a bit Trinitarian.
Pause. Hey, editor Alex here. If you like this kind of content, why don't you like the video? It actually really helps out the channel. And since it's brand new, you can also see that 99% of watchers aren't subscribed. So no pressure. But you could do that too if you want. But you may as well hit the bell if you're going to, because otherwise you'll never see what we do. Anyway, back to the show.
That we have our in-person gatherings in the building. We have our digital service. And then in sort of a church planting way, we're thinking of this idea of having home hubs, which are digitally resourced home churches. So they're still under the banner of St. John's. They would fall under our governance structures and things. But they are, they're smaller gatherings in people's homes or if they're larger than that, maybe a community centre. But they're digitally resourced. So we take the elements that we have for our digital service and we package them up slightly differently for each home hub, and they get access to them. So the assumption is they'd all use the teaching. We'd have unified teaching across all of our services. But then maybe one home hub has some musicians who can just pull out a guitar and do some worship music, but maybe someone else couldn't hold a note, and so they'll use our pre-recorded music that would be used for the digital service for their home hub gathering.
Okay.
So
and would they all watch the digital service as well on a Sunday?
No. So the home hub leaders would have access to the individual elements that would make up the service as a whole. So we want it to be more focused on the individual hubs and their opportunities to serve. So for the digital service, we'd pre-record some prayers and we'd pre-record a Bible reading. But actually, at a home hub, we'd love people in that space to be praying and to be reading the Bible for their group. So we don't want them to we don't want it to be a watch party. We want it to have that next level of engagement and service as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think with COVID, it hasn't created a paradigm shift necessarily in the church. It's just been the great accelerator of recent trends. So with technology that we have to even shoot what we're shooting right now, if we tried to do this 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it just wouldn't have been possible because the cameras are too expensive, the switches, we would have need huge setups. But the fact that we can both do this, I think, speaks to the fact that there's been a personal broadcasting revolution. Yeah. So the fact that you make a digital service, is it I suppose you're already halfway there to providing the resources for the home pods that are attached to your church.
Exactly. So those two elements will work really in tandem together, and they'll be shaped by the audience of each one, or the congregation members of each. And there's great opportunity in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. It's really under-churched there. And so we're hoping that, we'll be able to use the resources that we've got to do that digitally, rather than the sort of massive people cost that church planting often is, to be able to do that at sort of a micro level. Yeah.
What are you hoping to achieve?
If digital, as you've said, if digital is the great democratizer, that we're now at this point with our technology that we can do this really easily, maybe we could reshape this even further than what we've already done and look at that micro level of planting churches. You really only need 3 or 4 people to say, I'll start a home hub in this suburb, and then that 3 or 4 people can then turn into maybe 20, and maybe it turns into 50, and they start meeting in a hall somewhere.
Has COVID made you rethink the purpose of the church building?
Yeah, I think COVID throughout 2020 was a good reminder that the church is not a building, and it's much more about the people and the community of believers that you're with and having fellowship with them. And that's harder online, but it's not impossible.
So you've chosen to double down on digital. What made you, I guess, want to do that as opposed to doing a hybrid live stream?
It sort of came back, and you talk about this in the course, but it came back a lot to be all things to all people and using the medium of YouTube as it was designed for, as people are expecting when they're on YouTube. They're expecting to see a certain style or quality. And so for us, we're in a position where our main auditorium is pretty gross. Like, it's a nice space to be in, but it's gross.
I love your
camera.
honesty. Christians have to be more honest with themselves sometimes, I think.
It's got these weird hues of maroon and beige walls, and it's a beautiful room, right? When you're in there and the sun comes in these big windows we've got, it's lovely. But on camera, it's really bad. You've got to do a lot of work. And through lockdown, I bit the bullet and I set up sheets. I just got sheets on pin boards, and we put them up, and I put some fairy lights across it and a fake plant in it, and that was my set, and it was great, and it worked really well. But our auditorium itself looks really bad on camera, and that's definitely part of the reasoning to shift to a made for digital, in that we can control the space a lot better. We can make it look nice, because that's what people are looking at. And again, you say this in the course, but video is boring. And if you're watching someone who's standing, 30 meters from the camera or 15 meters from the camera, whatever it is, and they're just at a lectern doing their talk, that gets really dull if they're watching that for an hour, if your church service is an hour. And then if we were to do our digital services as a hybrid, as streaming the in-person, we'd actually need not just probably a new coat of paint on the walls, but we'd need new spotlights, because the lighting is not very good in that room, and it's not lighting that's modern or made for cameras. Whereas with our studio space, this is a self-contained room. This is the only time this room is used is when we're doing digital content, and so we lock it all up afterwards. And then it's the way that it's set up is that I can just produce content myself. I don't actually need any other people in the room to do that. Obviously, there's the higher financial cost of getting it set up, but if you've got the space, at the very least, putting your live streaming camera in that room, I think a made for digital service is actually far more achievable than people think. We're blessed with this studio space and this nice equipment, but you can make it work on a shoestring budget as well.
Yeah, I heard stories about when COVID started, people filmed in their empty auditoriums, like from way back, and the pastors would look and pretend that they were still talking to an audience.
Oh, no.
And quickly they realized it's like you just can't copy paste it. Like video is completely different. It's been 100 years of development of the visual language of how we interpret and enjoy video, and it is better when you're trying to go online to engage the camera, talk directly to your audience, and you can make a room look a lot nicer and a set than maybe just up the front. I mean, there are ways to inject life back into a hybrid service. I do preach about the hybrid service, but I think it is a great point that it doesn't actually take too much more on the resource scale to have a studio and record stuff. And like you said, I think the biggest cost people fail to take into account is the person power to produce stuff.
Definitely.
You've got the financial cost, but like reliably, how many volunteers are you going to get each week? Yeah. And what does each new volunteer add? So the fact that you can produce one-man shows is cool.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Would you call your online service and your online offerings at the moment, are they still, I guess, in an experimental phase?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're still trying to work out who's watching, why are they watching, and we're still trying to shape it for the medium that it is. And so, at the moment it's all pre-recorded, but the hope is that would shift to a live stream, become its own congregation, And then there's no reason that it needs to be tied to a Sunday either. We might decide that Saturday evening is a really good time to go live, and so we put it out on Saturday, and you can actually watch the talk first on digital, and then you can come back on Sunday morning and watch it in person as well. So yeah, we're still throwing ideas around like that.
I'm a big passionate fan of true live, even though it's harder, even though the quality aspect isn't as easy to control. And personally, as an editor, live scares me as well. Like we're chatting in the pre-show before, because I don't have control around what I can edit. But I think it does solve the problem that a lot of churches were having of the engagement and community factor. When you make it live and interactive, it's not a one-way street. It's not even a two-way street. When the culture is set, it actually can be a network of connection, and you could see the other people in the chat following up.
The benefits of live definitely are that you get to have that interaction much more naturally, and it's been really hard to get people to engage even at the best of times.
I've noticed that there's a huge generational difference in what live means. So to an older generation, live means like breaking news or a live sporting event, which is still very much a one-way interaction that you experience, I guess, simultaneously with other people, but you're not connected. Whereas live to a younger generation today actually looks more like Twitch streaming, where there's a constant interactivity and dialogue between creator and audience. So I really love that idea of having a pre-show MC that has the chat feed and they're trying to interact. But I also empathize that with an older generation, they haven't necessarily learned how to interact.
We see big spikes with our chat at the start of the service. Good morning, everyone. And then that's it. And then occasionally we'll get a spike sort of after the talk. Oh, really love that talk. Thank you, preacher.
Yeah, we did a survey of over 200 churches during lockdown to see how they were finding digital church. Churches felt like they were making, I guess I'd put it slightly different, content, but not creating community.
And so that's actually what's next on my radar, is to say, well, what's hooking people in? What's building that community online? And I think that's additional content throughout the week. That's, a different style, that's more perhaps conversational, that's more, more in line with the content that already exists in the secular world on YouTube. So your vlogs and your podcasts and stuff like that. That's you've got more of that chance for a two-way connection.
When I checked it out, I think I was really impressed that you didn't copy and paste the format of a traditional church run sheet for a Sunday. You made a service that fit the medium of online.
And so we've tried numerous things during 2020 when we were all fully digital. So for our evening service, we did a pre-show. We started 15 minutes beforehand and just had a chat to the people watching. We asked them questions. And so that was really helpful in trying to build that community. One night I also hosted a cooking show from my kitchen when we were in hardcore lockdown. So I took some of our gear home.
Nice.
And that was really good fun. And that got a lot of engagement. Yeah, they're sort of the things I'd really like to continue to explore.
Do you see interactivity as an important aspect to your future shows that you'd like to push more into?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one I'm pitching at the moment to our staff team, and then by the time this goes out, it might have already launched. We call it...
Hey, Editor Alex again. Last time, I promise we're just about to continue this convo, which I hope you're loving. But if you want to hear more of this kind of stuff, check out the link below to join our mailing list. In fact, if you use that link, I'll send you a downloadable PDF that breaks down the exact gear that Andy used in his studio, plus a diagram of how everything plugs in together so you could make your own studio. And if you want full in-depth training on how to start or take your church's current online service to the next level, we also have a whole course that covers every topic. This includes an ultimate gear guide with diagrams at every budget level for a hybrid service. And hey, since you're already keen to learn about this kind of live streaming stuff, why don't you take 10% off by using the code that's in the description below. Anyway, back to the conversation.
We called it St. John's Extra because it was just a piece of extra content that we put out during the week. It's a creative name, I know. But it's basically a short, maybe 5 or 10 minute video that is designed to be encouraging or engaging in some other way that's beyond the Sunday service. Yeah, over time, I'd really love to grow that community and hear what their questions are or what's on their heart for topics, or what are they wrestling with. And the target audience for this one would be the first time visitor, the people who are just exploring Christianity and Jesus for the first time. But then, I've got ideas for other shows that might be like a digital small group that is streamed as well. So it might be 3 or 4 people discussing the Bible for an hour, and it's live streamed. And so there's chat and people can throw in their comments as well. But it's a fairly accessible way to show people how to read the Bible as well, and how to engage with that in a productive way.
I like that you said ideas for different shows. It's cool. I had this little rant about podcasts. Podcasts 20 years ago, churches were probably some of the first adopters to go, oh, we have sound equipment, we have content every week, let's put it out there to people. Podcasts are kind of like in their mainstream golden era now, but I feel like the church didn't evolve on the form of content. Especially not, I guess, on the individual church level. There are some few standout non-sermon podcasts that, all Christians know. But if you think about it, there's not too many. And
there's few and far between. And if you look at the charts of, religion and spirituality, it's Stephen Furtick and, and it's just preaching all the way down.
Exactly.
Like you have to scroll a few pages before you get to anything that's not just a Sunday sermon.
I did always wonder why wasn't there a push for innovation that came from within churches themselves? Because there are stories in every church that are worth telling because God's working in every church. So I suppose I commend you for thinking of different formats and ways to use this new technology and medium that we have.
And I also think we're in this now and not yet season that we're out of restrictions pretty much completely. In 8 months or 10 months time, when the vaccine is fully rolled out and we're all inoculated, then our digital service, I fully expect will take a big sharp nosedive, as it did when we first started our in-person services. But what that'll do is it'll take our audience from being this broad to this broad, and then we can really target what we're doing and how we're doing it for those people who are actually preferring the made for digital.
That would be my next question, is that I suppose what do you hope for the future? What kind of person do you want? And is there going to be a decision point where you need to go, is it working or not? And what would what would success look like?
Definitely there needs to be a decision point at some stage post-vaccine when we settle. I don't know what that is, maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months. How long's a piece of string? But I think all churches need to be doing that at all stages. Is this service still bearing fruit? Is this program, is this ministry still fruitful? And we're putting in all these resources. We're not seeing any gospel harvest. So, we need to either change it or acknowledge that the good that it's done in the past and put it to rest. At the moment, if I talk about our current situation. So we've just done a bunch of thinking around this. We think that there's 5 types of people that are watching our digital service at the moment. There's those with an in-person preference who are isolating at home, who would really love to be at an in-person service, but for their own health reasons or other reasons, they're staying at home. There's those who are who would like an in-person service, but maybe they're traveling or they're away or they're sick that week, and so they're watching the digital service. There's those with a digital preference that actually don't want to come to an in-person service, even if restrictions weren't a thing. There's those with a digital preference who might live nearby but never actually attend St. John's physically, and the other people might live, that first group might live anywhere. They could be in Sydney or Perth or Canada, like wherever. And then the fifth group of people are the church hoppers, that they'll just watch anything that a church puts out. And so we love those people, and we're grateful that they're watching, and we hope that this builds them up for the kingdom of God. But ultimately, we're not shaping our decisions on those people.
Yeah.
So really, it's 4. And so we'll see those first 2 categories, the in-person preference, they'll return to in-person services once restrictions are eased. And the vaccines rolled out, and then the second category, they'll chop and change. So they might come to an in-person service, but then we're going to Tassie for the weekend, so we'll watch the digital service from Tassie. Those kind of people. And so then once most of those people are coming in person, again, we're not going to be shaping our digital service specifically for those people. It's really the digital natives, I guess, those people who really like the digital service, that's their service. They're the ones that we want to be building and shaping our church service for online.
The place of fellowship in that journey for those people. I suppose you've got the group who might just be anywhere in the world, so that's a bit of a different story. Do you hope to provide digital fellowship, or is there will you ever try and funnel people into a community group during the week so they have some in-person aspect?
We're still working that out. So at the moment, our funnel for digital is pretty much identical as our funnel for someone who turns up in person on a Sunday. That we would try and get to know them, we would try and connect with them, we would see if they're interested in joining a small group, a life group, and find one in their local area that meets at a time that works for them. So at the moment, it's the same process for digital or physical first-time guests, and that's been really successful, actually, because most of those people who are exploring us for the first time are local, so that's been good. But certainly we'll be thinking much more seriously over the next 6 months, 12 months, as we think about launching our sort of church plant home hubs as well, where there could be more gatherings than just in Diamond Creek. But the reality is, I think that most of those digital people, the way they find us on YouTube or our website, whatever, people that are more likely to want to connect with us long term are the invitations or the referrals. So we define them slightly differently. It's the same premise. It's someone who's already connected with St. John's or another church, sharing our content with someone else. And we just define it as invitation is, hey, you should watch this with me coming up, and referral is past. I saw this and this would really speak to you, so you should watch it. So same, that different. So they're most of the people that are going to be finding us online, I think, and wanting to take those next steps. So I think for now, the digital pathway being very closely matched with the physical pathway is okay, but certainly it's on my radar to try and build that more and more as we move forward.
Ali Lord from the group wanted to know about digital pastoral care strategies, which I guess comes under that. How do people how do they come to the stream, and then how are they cared for after? Do you have a strategy behind that?
All of our next steps happen at our website. So if someone needs to get prayer support, get practical help, then we encourage them to come to our website and request that. The live chat is very much the front door, and we want to invite people to come into the living room to have those conversations, and we do that through our website.
I like that metaphor of the front door. I think the digital space is the new front door for every church. I know you said that fifth group are church hoppers. Is there any thought about church shoppers? And I guess you were saying referrals and invites. But I suppose something I've been thinking about is the church of the future, even if they just had the group of the church shoppers, would that warrant having a live stream, because as the average turnover of a suburb over 5 years is 40% in Australia. So 40% of someone living in a suburb is moving, every 5 years, which means as a church, to not even grow but stay the same numbers, you have to grow, introduce new people by 7 to 12% every year. So I wonder if in the future, having a very good front door for people to see what you're about, will those be the churches that I suppose grow more easily under God's sovereignty, of course? Then I guess the church who chooses not to engage in the digital space, because I do see I mean, this is my personal preference, so everybody's different. But if I was to move into a new suburb and I didn't have an existing church that I knew of, I would be shopping around online. I wouldn't go in person until maybe the second or third time I'd seen what that church had to offer.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And pre-COVID, we very much thought of our website and our social media as our front door for those type of people, and for people new to church entirely. And so, we've really done a lot of hard work on that already. And so, digital is just sort of another door at the front door.
From running this digital service, is there anything that you've learned or that was unexpected in the journey to produce an online congregation?
From a practical standpoint, we had massive issues with our internet here at the church. We're on the NBN, but we're on the dodgy NBN, so we got fibre to the node and copper the rest of the way. And so the first few weeks, particularly of lockdown, was pretty hard for us to do a live stream, and that actually heavily influenced our decision to move to pre-recorded pretty quickly. So I think by April last year, we were doing pre-recorded content instead of live streamed.
That's very relatable to a lot of churches. Being like, we have internet. And then you put a video out there and it's that.
Yeah. So
you mentioned you were granted a hefty sum to make this happen. What's the story behind that?
Yeah. So last year, the state government in Victoria put out a grant tender application process. They called it the Let's Stay Connected Fund. And so, we put up our hand and said, absolutely, we would love to do that. So I put together a proposal with one of our associate ministers. It was focused around our community carols event that we do in December each year. It was about a $25,000 proposal that included a full live stream studio setup and a few extra things like event manager for the overall planning. And we found out less than a month, I think it was in the end, before the Carols event that we weren't unsuccessful in getting that grant. So we were pretty bummed. And then shortly after that, my senior minister called me and said, that grant application you've got, just the studio element, what price range are we looking at? Look, I could probably cut it down to about $10,000. And he said, well, what if you didn't cut any corners? Dream studio. And I said, well, look, probably $15,000. And he said, well, that's great because someone's offered $15,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
so, it was absolutely God just saying, it would be great if we got that grant from the government, but actually this is better. This is my church, St. John's, saying, yes, this is what we want to do. This is getting people on board with it and really encouraging me in my ministry to say, this is important to us as a church. And so, I was then able to get my dream kit list together and make it all happen.
Awesome. So what gear are you using in the studio?
Yeah. We're running the Blackmagic ATEM Pro ISO as our vision switcher. We've got the Rodecaster Pro as our audio mixer. I've got the mic that you're using, the pod mic. I've got a couple of them floating around, but these ones actually came from one of our members at St. John's. They're an Audio-Technica AT4033A. And then we've got a few Aperture LED panels, a Rode, the NTG4, and we use that for preaching. So there's no microphone in shot. It's just sitting above the camera framing. And then for cameras, we use the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4Ks. with a couple of lenses that are Panasonic 12 to 35mm. If I cut, I can show you because I'm in the studio as we speak. This is our setup. So I'm here behind the desk. Hello. You can see my multi-view monitor. I've got, we use ProPresenter, so we run that from here. And then we've got our sort of service setup. We've got a cross in the background, and you can see some lights and soundproofing and stuff hanging from the roof. And so this was our creche space. It
looks like a good room. So you've obviously put sound blankets up to not only block that window, but just make a better acoustic space. And so you do graphics from ProPresenter. Are you feeding the graphics into the ATEM? Mini Pro ISO?
Yeah, so we use input 4 on the ATEM. We've got our chroma key green as our background for ProPresenter, and then any graphics we have that have transparency will show that green as transparent once it hits the ATEM.
Well, thanks so much, Andy. I've learned heaps about what your church is doing, and I think it is a super unique approach that more churches should actually at least consider having a digital service and perhaps a studio space with the equipment they have. I feel like a lot of churches feel overwhelmed at the thought of improving their one camera setup, or maybe they only ever use their webcam during COVID. Maybe they feel left behind. But do you have any advice to churches who might want to take it to the next level or start?
Is this where I do the paid promotion of Level Up Your Church live stream? Yeah. So join the Level Up Your Church live stream course. It's great. More seriously, that's serious too because it's a good course. I think take stock of your space and what is possible. For me, COVID has been, and lockdown has been sort of a bit of a reset. We looked at our building and we said, well, which space is actually being used for what? And so that opened this opportunity for this to become a studio space. And now maybe you won't have a room the same size as me or with the same potential, but maybe you've got a little cupboard that's no longer being used for whatever, and that could actually be padded with a bit of a rug and have really nice sound quality in there. And so maybe that could be a mini studio for you. Also, as we all should be doing is taking stock of our gospel harvest and our gospel fruit, and what are we doing that is really resonating, and what are we doing that's maybe not resonating as much, and how can we balance those a bit better to be more effective for Jesus?